Well, good morning, everyone. It is
Morning.
so good to see all of you. Welcome, welcome. What a joy to see this computer screen full of beautiful, loving faces. It always makes me smile, even right on the verge of laughing when I see you beautiful people. Welcome to worship today. We're so glad that all of you are here. We say a special word of welcome to any that are here visiting. We're so glad to have you and hope that the presence of Christ will be so apparent that you'll want to come and be with us again. Today is a really special day, folks. In a church that prizes above all else two things, and that is justice, doing justice, and making music. We have one of the most amazing guests to help us live into that with us today. Tesfa Wondemagegnehu is well known in this community. Julie Amaker is going to introduce him more completely in a little bit. But I wanted just to say, if I could just take a modest, brief moment to say that Tesfa and I have something in common. We are both Florida State Seminoles. Now, go, exactly right. Go. Now, both Tesfa and I would like to make a special request, though. We ask that none of you ask either Tesfa or me what our record is in football this year. We would rather not talk about that this year. Ask us another year. But it's a great school, and Tesfa spent a lot of time in Tallahassee, and which is a place close to my heart. So we are so glad to have all of you here. I'd like to ask Tessa to put up the centering screen. You all will recognize these words as a call to justice from Bob Dylan, Blowing in the Wind. The picture there that you have before us is a beautiful description of how justice in this time of racism can be expressed in music. So let us take these two in as we prepare to worship God, and may God be with us in this service. Thank you, Jan. And now let us join together in our responsive call to worship. Please note that these words are lyrics to a piece of music that Tesfa will introduce us to later. So we are saying them now as the call to worship. We are frightened. We are angry. We are rising. We are hopeful. We are peaceful. We are striving. Won't stop fighting, won't stop marching, won't stop dreaming, won't stop loving and believing. Our voices are united louder than hate. We have gathered here. We've had all we can take. The time has come. You will hear our call. We're fighting for liberty and justice for all. And now may the peace of Christ be with you and also with you. Let us share in the peace of Christ. All right. We are going to have now our prayers for the people at this point in the service. Then let us finish our prayer time with the version of the Lord's Prayer that we have on the screen. Let us pray together. Our Creator, throughout the heavens, hallowed be thy flame. In a trillion suns, thy will be done. In the tiniest cell, thy kingdom comes. Give us each day a bird in flight, a flower's perfume, a bright star's light, and lead us not on a path of greed, but teach us to tread lightly, take only what we need. For ours is the journey from ignorance to understanding, from separateness to oneness, together with you, the universe, the energy, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. And at this point, I would like to invite Julie Amaker Clement to come forward and on Zoom to introduce our wonderful guest.
Good morning. I started to take some notes of everything I wanted to say to introduce Tesfa, and I thought, well, then he's not going to get a chance to talk. So I'm going to try to keep it short and sweet. When I first met Tesfa, which I think it's been 6 years at least, however long he's been in Minnesota. 7? Has it really been 7? Oh my God. And one of the things that he told me was how important relationships were, which sometimes, that seems so obvious, but he really works to build relationships and build community. And he changes the world one person at a time. And he's certainly changed my world and who I am. He and I were working on a holiday special called A Soulful Christmas, which is awesome. It's going to be posted on our website, and it's also going to be heard on Classical NPR. And it's the stories that are told in that program are just so powerful. And I said to Tesfa, oh my gosh, you've got to come and talk to our church as we work with our anti-racism pilgrimage. And so he agreed to do that. And here it is, St. Cecilia's Sunday. And he's going to tell us how we can make a difference through music. So Tesfa, take the floor, please.
So it was so great to begin the church with Pastor Gwen talking about our connection of being Florida State Seminoles together. But we also began today's conversation realizing that we were combining, we're both presenting this text from liberty and justice for all. So those words that we read together, liberty and justice for all, mean a lot to me because they come from a book that I was a part of co-creating called the Justice Choir Songbook. And Brandon Williams is a dear friend who is a professor at Rutgers University, and he is not a Seminole, unfortunately. But we had a big conversation about why were you inspired to write this piece of music for the Justice Choir Songbook? And, the words that resonate the most with me, we'll get to in a few moments, but I want us to sing this song together. So we'll do a little bit of a call and response, kind of like what we just did, except this time they're going to be pitches and rhythms. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And if the spirit moves you to sing with your outdoor voice, do not be shy. Nobody can hear you except the people in your homes. I will look over at the sidebar of screens, and if I see people barely moving their mouths, they're letting me know that they are not participating to the fullest extent. So here we go. When the fingers are pointing at me, it's my turn. When they're pointing at the screen, it's your turn. We are frightened. We are angry. We are rising. We are hopeful. We are peaceful. We are striving. Won't stop fighting. Won't stop marching. Won't stop dreaming. Won't stop loving and proclaiming and believing. Together, everybody. Our voices are united, louder than hate. We have gathered here. We've had all we can take. The time has come, you will hear our call. We're fighting for liberty and justice for all. Now we're going to try that beginning bit just one more time. And I want you to change your voice. So in choir, I want you to think of this as a choir rehearsal / conversation. In choir, sometimes we are asked to create different sounds. The conductor might refer to this as changing your tone quality. I would love for you to make your tone quality match the words that you are singing. So let's try that. We are frightened. We are angry. We are rising. We are hopeful. We are peaceful. We are striving. We are striving. Won't stop fighting. Won't stop fighting. Won't stop marching. Won't stop march. Won't stop dreaming. Won't stop dreaming. Won't stop loving, and proclaiming and believing. Sing together, everybody. Our voices are united, louder than hate. We have gathered here. We've had all we can take. The time has come, you will hear our call. We're fighting for liberty and justice for all. Now, I always love for us to sing that song twice because of the last words. Because of the last words. We're fighting for liberty and justice for all. So I need somebody to be bold right now. I would love for somebody to just raise your hand on the screen. I'm going to ask you to participate now. If you have ever been asked to recite the Pledge of Allegiance at any point during grade school, raise your hand if that happened to you in your life at any point. Somebody asked you to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Go ahead. If your screen is muted, go ahead and put thumbs up if you will. That would be awesome. Just to give me some information and know how many people have interacted with the words liberty and justice for all from the pledge. Okay, all right, so let's talk about this for a second. We think about those words. We think about the phrase liberty and justice for all. We have to make sure that those words ring true on this soil. And what's so interesting is that scholar and historian and Professor Eddie Glaude Jr. So eloquently wrote in his most recent book, Begin Again, which is basically an analysis of James Baldwin's words. When we think about Baldwin, we think about Baldwin's contributions to the United States. A lot of people just say, Baldwin is off the deep end. People don't really buy into what he's saying. But Baldwin told us years ago that we are committed to perpetuating the lie that liberty and justice is truly for all. And we are, in a way, committed to upholding the lie. Now, I am not calling out anybody. This is a calling in. Today's conversation, there will be some difficult moments, but I am calling you into this dialogue to say, we have to acknowledge that there is a problem. So I want to read you a short excerpt from Eddie Glaude's book. He said, American history would be contorted in the service of it, were efforts to resist the likes of slavery or to break the back of Jim Crow segregation would be conscripted into the grand story of America's greatness and its ongoing perfection. Slavery would be banished from view or seen as a mistake instead of a defining institution of systemic cruelty in pursuit of profit. That history would fortify our national identity, and any attempt to confront the lie itself would be sabotaged by the fear that we may not be who we say we are. For white people in this country, quote unquote, America is an identity worth protecting at any cost. Now, I know that those words are hard for us to stomach this early on a Sunday morning. Y'all are like, hey, we were just singing and having a good time. But I think for us to move and truly embrace the words liberty and justice for all, we have to acknowledge that there's a problem. And right now, I teach a music and social justice curriculum in the program at St. Olaf College. And I got just most recently this semester, a document from the White House saying that teaching critical race theory should be outlawed on US soil. Think about that, y'all. Now, Glaude wrote this book in June. The White House sent out a document in the fall, basically saying there's no issues with what happened in 1619. The first slave stepped foot on this soil in 1619 off the coast of Virginia. And we look at that, that's over 400 years ago, but there's still so many systemic issues that face people who look like me. So we have to be willing to live in this moment of discomfort and embrace it. Last year, I did a project with Dr. Cornel West in the Harvard Glee Club. And in that project, we talked about leaning into discomfort and leaning in so hard and for so long that those moments of discomfort become comfortable. Y'all, that's a sermon all to itself. When Cornel told that to the class, I was like, woo, he preached to me this day. The Lord has spoken through Cornel West, let me tell you. Because we sometimes, and we got to admit this, and I'm not painting with broad strokes, I am painting for myself. It's much easier to not live in that permanent state of discomfort. It's so much easier to just be like, somebody said something, I'm not going to risk anything by calling it out. I'm not going to step in. I'm going to be nice, Minnesota polite. Not Minnesota nice, Minnesota polite. Because we know what happens is that when you go home and you pick up the phone and you call and say, such and such did blah, 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 blah. But we might not be willing to call such and such out in the moment. And so what I want to talk about right there is the words with liberty and justice for all. I am talking about people who look like me, but I can sit here on a Sunday morning at 10:21 a.m. and say, I am privileged. Don't let me fool you to think that my lived experience is anything like those people living in North Minneapolis, in Baltimore, in Detroit, in Southside Chicago, in my hometown of Memphis, Tennessee. The lives that they are living is much different than the life that I am living in this basement in my 3-story townhome in Northfield, Minnesota, where I drive 10 minutes to work and teach at the Disney World of choir colleges. I am privileged. And I acknowledge that privilege by saying it is my responsibility to live in discomfort, to then risk this privilege, to speak truth to the lie, as James Baldwin highlighted many years ago. So when we say with liberty and justice for all, so many of us have already interacted with those words. How many people are now willing to risk something to ensure that liberty and justice can truly be for all? Raise your hands if you are. Today is your day. And so I am saying that the definition of us being willing to risk is not defined by a single person. You get to determine how you want to enter this race of racial justice. And it's a race. I used to say it's a marathon. Y'all, I am here this Sunday morning to tell you I am fearful for where we are in this society. I normally am super like, yo, we got time. We can, do this slowly. Listen, I am worried about the fabric of our democracy. Will it actually stay together? I am fearful because people are fed up. People feel like they haven't been heard and haven't been seen or represented. And as MLK says, and we don't like to quote this one, the riot is the voice of the unheard. And it's hard to swallow that. It's really hard to swallow those words. But I say to us today is that us living in that discomfort is a beautiful thing. And now we got to sing. We got to sing. So what does that look like? What can you do? And I think the perfect thing that you can do is just to take one foot in front of the other and lead with love. So we're going to get you to clap along with me. Everybody, we're going to sing a little bit. Hopefully you can see Lead with Love. Sorry, I think that was the wrong song. Hopefully you can see this one now. Can everybody see? Are you looking at One Foot Lead with Love? Awesome.
Yes, we do. We have it, Tesfa.
Okay, perfect. So I cannot sing low A. I'm a tenor. So we're going to change that key. So for people who have perfect pitch, we're doing it in C minor. Repeat after me. You got to put one foot with the same authority. You got to put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. There we go. Once you feel comfortable enough to sing, just join in with me. I'll let it repeat for a while. You got to put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You got to put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Sing it. You got to put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put, clap with me. One foot in front of the other and lead with love. You got to put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Don't give up hope. You're not alone. Don't you give up. Keep moving on. You got to put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You got to put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead. Verse 3. I know you're scared. I know you're scared. And I'm scared too. And I'm scared too. But here I am. But here I am. Right next to you. Right next to you. You got to put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You got to put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. And lead with love. And lead with, harmonize. And lead with love. And lead with love. And lead with love. And lead with love. Unmute yourself and hold a chord. Unmute yourself, hold a chord. Love. Go ahead, unmute, unmute. Hear yourself sing together. Very good. We got a chance to hear us sing together. That's one thing that we want to hear. And I will tell you, that was not the most interesting chord that I have ever heard at the end of One Foot Lead with Love. So well done on this Sunday morning. So it talks about beginning that conversation, taking the step. What can you do? We talked about the pain. We talked about the reality that we face. But now what is next? And one of the things I would recommend, if you are not familiar with Kendi's How to Be Anti-Racist, that is a great book to start with. If you're familiar with Wilkerson's Cast, it's another phenomenal book that I would strongly recommend. Maybe you're interested in, I don't know if you've seen, Kendi has a collaboration with Rendell's called Stamped. And if you can find these at a Black-owned bookstore, that would be incredible. I know Amazon is problematic. Listen, I get it, but it's so easy to just go on the Kindle and say, this is it right here. But if you can drive and find a Black-owned bookstore or an online shipping Black-owned bookstore, that would be incredible. Maybe you want to hear it from somebody who happens to be white. And there's an author who I know is problematic, and I know some people, scholars, have pushed against her because of her rhetoric being labeled as somewhat of a divisive in nature. But I want to share a bit from Robin DiAngelo's book, White Fragility. Raise your hand if you're familiar with Robin DiAngelo's book, White Fragility. Now, Julie and I started working together 7 years ago for this big media company. And APM is the second largest public media company in the country, only behind National Public Radio. But what's interesting about this quote from Robin DiAngelo's book, White Fragility, as this person who spent years in media, I can tell you DiAngelo's words ring true. DiAngelo says, we are socialized into these groups collectively. In mainstream culture, we all receive the same messages about what these groups mean, why being in one group is different experience from being in another. And we also know that it is, quote unquote, better to be in one of these groups than to be in its opposite. For example, to be young rather than old, able-bodied rather than have a disability, rich rather than poor. We gain our understanding of group meaning collectively through aspects of the society around us that are shared and unavoidable. Television, movies, news items, song lyrics, magazines, textbooks, schools, religion, literature, stories, jokes, traditions, practices, histories, and so on. These dimensions of our culture shape our group identities. Sorry, my cat, as you can hear, is wanting to play the piano. I'm gonna have to turn the volume down just because we don't need a cat jumping in and deciding that he wants his solo opportunity right now. But I bring it up is because how can music be more? We talk about that, how music inspires us to do more. I'm gonna share a short clip from the St. Olaf Viking Chorus, where we used basically our entire year to dedicate ourselves to live in that discomfort, to have these conversations. Now, I'm not gonna play the entire clip, but I will play you just an excerpt from a piece of music that was written by a Black composer and a white composer. Black composer happens to be one of the most prolific arrangers of spirituals living. His name is Stacey V. Gibbs, and the white composer has to be one of the most prolific arrangers of American folk songs. His name is Sean Kirchner. And they said, let's create a conversation starting composition. And these are the words that they co-created. No color can come between us, no shade to be thrown, no tone to be taken to demean us, no hue of hate to be shown. No color, no shade, no tone. Let me be transparent with you. Goes on and skips ahead and says, more love is our intention. Stop. Did we forget to mention that we are more alike than different? Now, I can say that a lot of people who first interacted with these words on our campus felt like that song is a song of unity, a song of hopefulness. But there's also a swath of our population who would interact with those words and say, you are asking us to be colorblind. You are asking us to gloss over the larger systemic issues that we're facing. So we lived in that discomfort, unpacking that text all year long with these composers and through scholarship, specifically DiAngelo's words. So here's the clip of the St. Olaf Viking Chorus living in these moments.
An excerpt from Robin DiAngelo's book, White Fragility, Chapter 1. We don't see ourselves in racial terms. I'm a white American raised in the United States. I have a white frame of reference and a white worldview, and I move through the world with a white experience. My experience is not a universal human experience. It is a particularly white experience in a society in which race matters profoundly. A society that is deeply separate and unequal by race. However, like most people raised in the US, I was not taught to see myself in racial terms, and certainly not to draw attention to my race or behave as if it mattered in any way. Of course, I was made aware that somebody's race mattered, and if race was discussed, it would be theirs, not mine. Yet a critical component of cross-racial skill building is the ability to sit with the discomfort of being seen racially, of having to proceed as if our race matters, which it does. Being seen racially is a common trigger of white fragility, and thus, to build our stamina, white people must face the first challenge, naming our race.
Now, for time's sake, I'm going to skip ahead some in the song because you're going to have to experience basically the response to the song.
You're not black. You're so white. Wait, you're white? What kind of black person dresses like that and talks like you do? No one. You just want to be white. Welcome to high school. No, better yet, welcome to my life. Have you ever experienced racism? Probably not. I might have said no, had it not been for this beautiful black body God put me in. Racism isn't just burning a cross in front of a black man's home and marching around in a white hood anymore. Racism, like any other virus or plague, has adapted to its environment. Racism is having people tell you you need to work harder for something and turning around to Jim and telling him he's got it because he's a natural. Racism is being reprimanded for the smallest of actions when Becky can get away with 10 times worse and be praised as a saint. And I don't mean once. I mean over and over and over again until you realize it's not you. The thing they are reprimanding and criticizing is your skin. Racism is being told you're too black to be white and too white to be black. All this, and yet still, I see the gray. The intersection of the two, a place where I can belong and become in community with other like-minded individuals. They are the ones who see and understand the struggle, not always people of color, but people who take the time to learn different cultures and to see that regardless of appearance, people are people, but that takes time. It's easy to be racist, bigoted, and ignorant because that takes a lack of effort and a large amount of carelessness. But to truly see takes time and intent and purpose. It means you have to be real. Real like our history. Real like my stories. And real like the struggle. Then there will truly be no color.
So you're probably wondering, why did he decide to spend the time to show us that moment? You know, why that moment specifically? And I wanted us to basically look at how music calls us to do more. Now, I will tell you that I did less music that year with those students, just FYI, and had more dialogue with those students. So instead of singing 8 pieces of music, we sang 5. But we dug deeper. We lived into that discomfort. And everything was based on an actual incredible scholar, Janet Helms. I don't know if you're familiar with Janet Helms, but I'm going to share a document. Helms talks about white identity development. Thumbs up if you can see this. And the reason I brought up media is like we have to think about where Helms basically labels the contact phase. This is where people use phrases like, I don't see color. Talking about race brings disunity. Belief that racism is caused by talking about race. Belief that you aren't racist if you don't purposefully or consciously act in racist ways. Now, what's interesting is that this is changed. Notice right here, it says how folks move from this stage by being confronted with active racism or real world experiences that highlight their whiteness. Now, what's so interesting about this phrase is that I can share this doc as well with the congregation, but it gives you activities, podcasts, videos, articles, and books to help people progress from contact. Look how far we got to go down. Look how far that is. It's a long journey to get to autonomy. And what's interesting is that Helms wrote this content years ago, but look at what she writes in the autonomy section. Embodied anti-racism, being willing to step in the way of racism when possible, engage in protest, has done the work to recognize their own identity. That's what the first student talked about in the Viking course, so that they can effectively be anti-racist. Recognizes that growth is continual and they might need to revisit previous stages. So meaning there has to be a healthy level of humility to say, all right, I felt like I was in autonomy, but maybe I need to go back to immersion, or maybe I need to go back to pseudo-independence. So when we think about this, we think about living in that discomfort and sharing that. I would love for us to open it up for a few seconds. I know that I can talk and talk and talk, and I don't know what time we need to get out of here. Pastor Pratt, what time we need to be done?
I have an exact answer to that. We need to be out of here when you have said everything you need to say to us.
Oh, come on now. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. I appreciate that. But let's talk about that. Anybody willing to share an experience? Somebody said, please share the doc. I am going to put that doc right now into your chat box. So you can click this and it'll go directly to your URL. Like if you click this URL, this is for you to use. I'm making this open and available to everybody. This is a phenomenal resource. Please take the time. Like Whistling Vivaldi is a great podcast on National Public Radio. It talks about these things. I did not compile this resource, but I am friends with people who did. They're not looking for money. They're basically give you the places where you can donate to. The education is more important than actually securing funds on this kind of stuff. Like, as I said, this is a race now. You know, we can talk about these books, you know, by Wilkerson and Kendi and D'Angelo, but the reality is that those books are for people who can afford to buy those books. And we have to acknowledge that there are some people in this country who are not in a position with even time on their hands to read a book by a Kendi or a D'Angelo or a Wilkerson. So, you know, sharing these types of resources openly and freely, open sourcing this fight for justice is the most important thing that we can do. Think of this as Linux for justice. Only computer nerds will get that joke right there, I think. Awesome. So anybody willing to share, you know, just for a few seconds, I just want to take a few moments. Anybody, I've been talking a lot, willing to share, maybe there are some moments where you've experienced some of that discomfort and maybe not been willing to engage. Anybody willing to share? Please do not feel like you need to say anything. But if you're willing to share right now, I want to give you the floor, where you've been in moments of discomfort and you felt like you hadn't said anything. I know it's scary to say this in front of your friends and your church mates. And this is good. I want you to know, FYI, this is the normal response. And that's okay. We are all a work in progress. Is that at the beginning of our conversation, I asked you how many of you are willing to risk something. That was very intentional for this moment. Is that the first thing that has to happen is that you have to take that first step, one foot in front of the other. And you acknowledging a part of that, basically what we just read, is the thing that you can do, something tangible today, is to start to acknowledge how have you been complicit in our lived racist history, because this is our soil. I'm not calling, as I said, I'm not calling anybody out. I'm calling us all in to do this work together, calling us all in. All right.
I'll say something since
Okay.
I'm supposed to be here working with you.
All right.
I mean, right now, of course, my head is spinning going, oh, I can't think of an exact example, though I know I've encountered it, but I will just say that the most blatant one is not realizing that I had white privilege. I had no idea even what that was until about 5 years ago. Trying to learn more about that and understand what that really means. And that's kind of it's been a very humbling experience to understand that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that, Julie. Ken, it looks like Ken has his hand up.
This goes back to 1954 when I was 13 years old. My father was blind and we went to a convention for the blind in Nashville, Tennessee. Segregated train stations, segregated restaurants, the whole bit. And one day he said, the convention's kind of boring today. Pick a movie from the newspaper and I'll take you to a movie. So we went to see Gone with the Wind. Well, about halfway through the movie, he thought perhaps people were reacting in a strange way to the movie. And he nudged me and he said, describe the people here in the theater. I said, well, they're no different than you or I, except they're all black. And he said, let's go get some popcorn. We went out to the lobby and got popcorn, and he says, now we're leaving. And at the time, I thought that was wrong, but I was 13.
Yeah.
And segregation was the way it was. And I really didn't fight it or speak up at the time. And looking back, I regret that now.
Thank you for sharing that, Ken. So, you know, it looks like somebody else has their hand up. It's Doug Screen.
This was in my early 20s. I was living and working in Dallas, Texas. And we had a young man that was, kind of an intern. He had just graduated from Prairie View A&M, which is an all-black
HBCU
college in Texas. And he was about to leave to go, I don't know if it was great, but he was about to leave. And everybody just loved this young man. He was just really, really neat. And what was hard was as he was leaving, we were in the lobby of this big office building in downtown Dallas. And it was on my part and a couple of other young ladies' part was very hard because we didn't know what people would think. This young man a hug and a kiss goodbye. And you know, that's I think of that a lot because he was such a neat young man.
Thank you for sharing that. So we're looking at this this conversation and we're saying like, all right, maybe we can figure out how to collaborate with these communities. How can we get our hands dirty? How can we roll up our sleeves and get into the trenches and do work? And I want to just share a little bit of cautionary tale. I grew up, I don't know if y'all remember, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Raise your hand if you remember that phrase. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Maybe you remember a different phrase from the order of operations. Anybody willing to share their phrase from learning the order of operations in algebra class? Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally was the way I learned it. Now, I share that because sometimes we go outside of that order of operations when we try to get into the trenches and do work. Sometimes we just jump right in. And I think that it's critical right now for us to take the time and realize that there's something we can do before that. And I think that there's a quote from Donna Walker Kuhn's book, An Invitation to the Party, that helps us truly understand what does it mean to create a rich and robust relationship with these communities who we really want to connect with and basically amplify their message and their platform. So I want to read this quote for you. It says, I define audience development as the cultivation and growth of long-term relationships, firmly rooted in a philosophical foundation that recognizes and embraces the distinctions of race, age, sexual orientation, physical disability, geography, and class. Audience development is also the process of engaging, educating, and motivating diverse communities to participate in a creative experience as an important partner in the design and execution of the collaboration. So when you are thinking about, I want to do this really cool thing as you move forward, and I hope you keep doing these really awesome things, before you even recognize what that thing is, reach out directly to the stakeholders. Figure out who are those stakeholders in the Twin Cities who you can connect with and say, we don't have an idea other than that we want to serve with you and amplify what it is that you need to get to our community. That is like a radical shift in the way that we typically do some of these things. Typically, the way it goes about it, we got this really cool idea. We start working on the idea. Then we pitch the formulated idea to said community and say, hey, would you be interested in collaborating? And what I'm saying is, let's flip that. Let's say I have no agenda other than to get to know your soul. I want to spend time with your soul as somebody who identifies as a marginalized voice. I want to know you, what it is that you need me to know. And I need to also acknowledge it is not your job as someone who has been marginalized, who has been minoritized on this soil, to educate me. I'm not here for an education as a white person. I am here basically to say, I will do whatever it takes to amplify what you need our community to hear. That is what collaboration looks like. It said, somebody commented on the side, we do not feel that to honestly say that a majority of Blacks are superior to the majority of whites, music, athletes, since when is complimenting people, groups of people on the superior abilities of races? We not understand how can praising anyone be racist. Well, I think it's the group tropes and stereotypes. I think that we should try to avoid that. Thank you, Cordell, for sharing that. I appreciate you being willing to share it. It's the thing that you don't get to determine what somebody else internalizes as racist. And that's the thing that we just have to live there and recognize that some people might say, yo, thank you for that compliment. Yeah, I am pretty athletic, or I'm pretty good at singing. But some people might immediately internalize that, oh my God, listen to this, what we have identified as a trope, a racist trope, or a broad generalization, racist generalization. And they might say, oh, I'm offended by that. That was a microaggression. And we can have microaggressions is a whole nother sermon, that's another conversation we can have. But, real talk is to say, instead of saying that, you can just give a compliment and say, hey, I think you're an awesome person. And awesome could be a part of their talent or their, what you consider to be superior athleticism. But awesome is not offensive. And I think it's when we use very specific words that have been identified as tropes, I think it can get us in trouble. I appreciate you sharing it. Yes, we're going to get to that Q&A section because I know folks got some questions. But I don't want us to just linger. I want us to move forward. I want us to move forward because I think it's critical for us to identify. I think I've gotten a lot of feedback from doing these conversations from across the country that they feel like this is a new problem. America hasn't always been racist. It's just racist now. That's what I've been hearing that, y'all. I really have been getting that feedback from people. And I want to now take a historiological trip together. We're going to have a conversation. I'm going to go back I'm going to say way back in 1852, y'all. This is July of 1852. You might have heard the name Frederick Douglass. He delivered a very famous 4th of July speech. And I'm not going to read the entire speech. I'm just going to read an excerpt of this speech from 1852. Fellow citizens, pardon me. Allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I or those I represent to do with your national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us? And am I therefore called upon to bring our humble offering to the national altar and to confess the benefits and expect devout gratitude for the blessings resulting from your independence to us? I say it with a sad sense of the disparity between us. I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me. The sunlight that brought life and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me. This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice. I must mourn. In 1936, Langston Hughes wrote in his poem, Let America Be America Again, 1936, he said, oh, let my land be a land where liberty is crowned with no false patriotic wreath, but opportunity is real and life is free and equality is in the air we breathe. And the dark voice responds, there's never been equality for me, nor freedom in this homeland of the free. Now, I share that to say that we go on into the mid 20th century and later in the 21st century, and we listen to people like Kendrick Lamar and Common, and we listen to NWA and understand that these words might sound different because there might be some profanity intertwined with it, but it's still the same message. It's still the same message that, folks, we are tired. And the reason I keep saying that it's a race is because I don't know how much longer our minoritized and marginalized groups can hold on. I bring it up because most recently I'm the most hopeful. Like that's my gig. I go around the country, you know, talking about hope and justice and love. And the other day I was just up in Burnsville at this gun shop on Highway 42, testing the AR-15 out of the fear for protecting my Black daughter and my white wife. That's America in 2020. I don't even believe it. I don't own guns. I grew up around guns. I grew up around people having guns all my life. I never thought to own a weapon. But as I'm driving down the streets of Northfield and I'm looking at these caravan of Trump cars and these caravan of Black Lives Matter cars dancing in the streets, causing car accidents, antagonizing each other, I only see it escalating. So I keep coming back to the word race, and not the way that you think of it. Race as in we need to expedite this work. You know, when you go to the post office and you get first class priority, I'm asking y'all to go to FedEx. We need to overnight this, but we also have to do it well. So I bring that up to say, I do still share hope. There is still hope here. I am hopeful, y'all. This work is not going to be easy, but I did not purchase said AR-15. I walked out of that gun shop. I sat in my car and I cried because I realized the fact that our society has devolved to this point where a college professor at St. Olaf, this privileged bubble in Northfield, Minnesota, felt the need to even investigate a purchase of an assault rifle to protect his family. I look at my childhood. I think about growing up in this Black Baptist church. Julie has heard me talk a lot about this church in Memphis, Tennessee, in our Christmas special. But I want to dig in and give you a little bit more information. My childhood senior pastor, Dr. Benjamin Lawson Hooks, who was the former NAACP executive director and a major civil rights leader who marched with King and so many others, instilled a fervor of this work in all of his congregants. And even as that chubby little boy sitting in the back pew next to my mama, I can still remember one of his sermons. Dr. Hooks delivered a long and powerful message on justice and kindness until the apex of his sermon erupted in song. That man's rich baritone was everything, y'all. It crescendoed mightily over Greater Middle Baptist Church that day, igniting the entire congregation into an extemporaneous delivery of "We Shall Overcome." We stood, we swayed, we held hands, and in that moment, in that singular moment, our souls were united by the healing spirit of song. Congregations like y'all and people like y'all all over this country give me hope. And because of that hope, I truly believe that we shall overcome someday. Now, we opened with that as our focusing music, but I want us to sing it together right now. I want us to be willing to sing the words and internalize, we shall overcome someday. Can everybody see that on the screen right now?
Yes, it's up. Tesfa.
Thank you. Sing it together. Ready? Go. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, dear. shall overcome someday. I would love to open the floor to dialogue, and you know, I want to look over and see what have I missed. Good point. That's the problem with identity politics. People as groups, not we can talk about identity politics. If you want to ask me a specific question, we can go there. I would love it. But now is the time for us to begin that open dialogue. I'm so excited about.
Tesfa, this is Gwen.
Hey, Gwen.
My question to you is framed by two things. One is the urgency, the deep, deep urgency I heard in you today. I don't know how long I can go on. Over against what I don't know how else to say it. We just had 72 million people vote for a white national racist president. So, and I could say a lot of other things about how it seems so hard to break through. One of the things that we're learning at the presbytery level, and one of the things that some of us that grew up in the South know, is that it is so deeply embedded in this country.
Yes.
And over against that, I mean, there is a member of this church who has, has just been worn down to the nub because of the ongoing hatred that we see. You just said, Tesfa, I don't know how much longer I can hang out. So, I mean, I can last. So my point is, I'm trying to help these people, my people here in this church, and then my own self. How do we, where do we find the strength not to give up?
Mm-hmm. You know, and I will say, stepping into the arena is the biggest move. Once you're in there, I'm not worried about y'all. Once you're in, you're going to be like, oh my God, yes. You're going to be so fed by doing this work. It's that first step, which is why we included 1 Foot Lead with Love, is to say, I know by stepping into this arena, my privilege, my access are now in jeopardy. And that second word is big, access. Is that we think about power sometimes it's like, oh, you know, I'm a powerful person because of the job I hold or the title I have. But power is also access and proximity to power. And that if you are speaking truth to power, there is a possibility that someone who is holding power might reject your access. And that's a fear. Like, let's acknowledge that. Raise your hand if you have ever been fearful of losing access to someone who you love, care, or respect because you are worried about what the reaction to what you are saying would be. Raise your hand if you have somebody like that in your life. We have to, yep, there's a lot of us. That's legit. That's so legit. And so I think there takes a little bit more self-analysis and probably prioritizing. Do you prioritize? Because this is the thing, like I'm not saying this to be an alarmist, is that access won't mean anything if our country is basically being burned down because of civil war. I'm not saying that as a hyperbolic statement. I'm saying that as a real reality that we could face in the next 50 years. And if we get to 50, that would be a blessing. And so I want us to acknowledge the fact that we talk about access. If we are willing to take that first step, once you're in the arena, once you're basically out there marching post-vaccination, we don't need nobody catching the coronavirus. You can do a whole bunch of stuff right now from the safety of your own homes, like picking up the phone, donating, leveraging your privilege. You may, that also could be basically looking at the people who are, because this is the thing, and I struggled with this coming to Minnesota, is that I've been a part of large nonprofit structures, and those people use these marginalized communities to help fund their larger operating budget. They basically say, oh, look at this cool thing that we're doing. It's so awesome. This is awesome. But then a lot of those funds are basically being earmarked for sustaining their organization. So I challenge us today to say, working through this church, how can you put the money directly into the hands of the people who need it? How can you put the resources directly into the hands of the people who need it? Start to interrogate these ways that you have been donating in the past. Is that the most efficient way of getting it? I can tell you, I've heard about the reparations funds that you have here at this church, and it gives me so much joy and happiness that there is something like that that exists in an institution like yours. So I will say that, you know, there are ways that you can get involved right now, but I think that interrogation of like, how are my funds being used? How are my funds being allocated is something that we can start with. Any other questions? Yeah. And just unmute yourself, just go. Because I can't see all three screens at once. So if you just go.
Okay.
We have a long working relationship with Liberty Church in North Minneapolis. It's on 37th and Bryant North.
Okay.
And not only has that been financial, but we have been there at times helping with their programs for youth. They are the front line in North Minneapolis. They are a predominantly Black congregation. And I've always felt good that every nickel that ever went that direction, everybody who ever went there to help, was 100% of that was going to the cause. And we would like to continue that relationship.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you.
Tesfa, thank you so much for your words today. You're just amazing, and I'm so grateful that you're here. I have a question for you, and that is, you said that, yes, as people of color, we are tired. We are so tired. And my question for you is, with, you know, you have your faith, we all have, you know, the same tools and and resources for us to keep putting one foot in front of the other. But what do you have do you have a go-to for when the tank is empty, for when you can't lift that foot and you can't put it in front of the other? Do you have something that you go to? Do you have something that you cling to when you are so tired?
Chris, thank you for sharing that, because I believe that you have just expressed what millions of marginalized and minoritized people in this country feel day in and day out. Why bother? I don't have the energy to fight it anymore. Like when we even think about what's happening in Detroit, what's happening in Philadelphia, what's happening in Atlanta, where there are people openly trying to silence Black and brown voices through the vote, to suppress their votes, to completely eliminate. And we think about that, and we look at those cities, Detroit, upwards of 80% Black. We look at Atlanta, 40%. We look at Milwaukee. We look at all these cities. There's so many people who basically have been living this for so long that they don't have the energy to put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. And I wish I had something. I feel privileged and blessed that I get to, when I am exhausted, I have a charging station upstairs, and her name is Aida. I have a 3-year-old daughter who, that there are times where even if I feel like I can't fix the issues of the world, I feel like I can still make a micro level influence on my daughter upstairs. And that is filling for me, and it recharges me. But I will say, as you do this work, prioritizing self-care is critical. This work will drain you. This work will drain you. And just like Chris just articulated, it's not easy, y'all. And I would just say, pray, take care of you, see if you can take a few weeks off. One of my favorite activists in the Twin Cities, she inspires me, Nakima Levy-Pounds. She basically, as a part of her work and doing this work day in and day out, she took a full 30 days off, and she got off the grid and she recharged herself for her friends and her family. So that's what I would recommend to people who are starting to feel that drain, is to turn it all off. And it's hard to do that because you have to acknowledge that you are in a position of privilege to even turn it all off, that you can walk away from that reality for a while. Because there are people who can't turn it off, who are living in that space 24/7. And it's interesting is that somehow we look at this in 2020 and acknowledge that there's so many similarities to the way the slave lived, as they woke up at sunrise and worked until sundown, and then they cleaned inside the master's home, then they prepared food for their own family, and they cleaned up their living quarters, and then they woke up again and did it all over every day of their lives. And there are people still living harsh, not slavery-like, but harsh conditions in 2020, that's just as draining. It's interesting, Cordell, you brought up this point I want to address. You said that's the problem with identity politics. People as groups, not individuals. Blind people are blind, not deaf nor retarded. I would hate to use that word anymore. We also have problems with not with our blindness, but how some people react to it. I want to share with you, scholar. There's an incredible scholar. I don't know if you're familiar with the name Kimberly Crenshaw. Kimberly Crenshaw coined the term intersectionality in 1989. Y'all, that's a long time ago. That's a long time ago. And so when we look at intersectional identities, I am a Black, straight, Christian man. So I can tell you, man and Christian gives me access and power that, now I'm going to give you another intersectional identity. Someone could be a trans Latinx woman. I can tell you, based on those 3 different identities that I just labeled for you, I immediately have more access and more power than that trans woman of color, specifically the trans Latinx woman. Like, we just got to acknowledge that when we look at what Kimberly Crenshaw, she didn't intend for intersectionality to be weaponized. It's just for people to truly understand that we do have a little bit of privilege because of the way we're born, because of certain things that are out of our control. Like, that's not really up for debate. Like, we have to be able to acknowledge, as someone who has been minoritized, I'm still a man that holds power, that gives me access. And now in the academy, I have to acknowledge that the academy is going to be the first place where we start to see this. The academy meaning educated spaces. So let's say if I work for Minnesota Public Radio, but I work for St. Olaf College, educated Black man basically says, oh, well, we need to fix it. So let's lift up this educated Black man. Listen, that's cool. Fine, lift me up. But the reality is, I would rather say, instead of pointing the attention my direction, let me use my platform and amplify this Black man in North Minneapolis, who basically has been working temp jobs for the past 15 years, who's basically in Section 8 housing, who can't afford food right now for his Thanksgiving meal to provide for his family. Because y'all, that's not my life. I'm privileged. So I don't want to be grouped, and I get what you're saying, Cordell. I don't want to be grouped as that, but you better believe I'm gonna do everything. Every breath that's gonna come out of my body is going to be to amplify that person's voice. Period. That's not up for, because I live in that. That's living in that permanent state of discomfort. I got plenty of food upstairs, and I got so many ribs in this deep freeze that I can throw out on Thanksgiving. Let me tell you, I will soak these ribs today and start smoking these ribs for Thursday and be just fine. But then when you look at North Texas, there were 6,000 cars in a food line. We're talking about food insecurity that we can't even imagine. 6,000 cars, y'all. There's so much work that got to be done. But Cordell, did that help you understand intersectionality? When you think about identity politics was not the original coin of the phrase. That came from Kimberly Crenshaw when she created intersectionality in the 80s.
So are there any other questions? The others of you are wanting to raise your hand or unmute?
I had one question, and that is, what do you do coming in as a white person to clue people that you're not coming in as a threat?
Yeah, that distrust, that is a big one. Guess what, y'all? It goes back to what I just said when I was reading the Donald Walker Kuhn quote. It's like, basically, well, this is the thing that has been so unfortunate. And in the Twin Cities, I find it to be probably the worst that I've experienced nationally, of nonprofits and organizations profiting off of minoritized trauma, that people are like fearful and they distrust, because these organizations have been coming in these communities for years, but there hasn't been any radical shift. And those same organizations have in a way, to say it, they've created a justice enterprise where they can say that I raise these monies and I create this beautiful portfolio that I show to my board of directors, and those board of directors then sustain the organization. So what I would say to you, I'm glad you asked that question, is that if you were to get involved, the first step is getting involved and say, I'm just here. Don't share what you've learned. Don't share what you've read. Don't share what you plan on doing. Just say, I am here. And it goes back to the song that we sang with 1 Foot Lead. I know you're scared and I'm scared too, but here I am right next to you. And if you can go stand beside those minoritized and marginalized voices and just say, whatever it takes, let me know, that to me will help the distrust disappear quicker. It won't be foolproof, but it'll help it disappear quicker.
That's helpful.
Where do you think Jill is?
Well, Tessa,
He's doing it.
Tesfa, you have, I just can't thank you enough for how you have given of yourself today. You have just brought everything to us, and it's our heart's desire and work to do something about racism. And your presence here has informed that in such helpful ways and inspiring ways. And we are so grateful for your presence and for your work in the world. And our prayer, Tesfa, is that you will be uplifted and held by God's hands, and that the strength that you need to do the work that you do will continue to flow. even though it's so very hard. And
Thank you so much for your words, Pastor Gwen. Thank you.
It's kind of hard to move on to anything else after that, but we need to have a couple of announcements made. I have one to make, but I think first Doug Hoyer would like to announce something. Doug, are you there still?
I am. As you know, I'm fairly involved with the Line 3 project. And if you at all think that Line 3 is a bad idea, please check the e-blast for a couple of ways that you can contact Attorney General Ellison and request that he place a stay on construction until the Department of Commerce suit is resolved. There's two ways to contact him. There's a link to go to a pre-canned email that you have an opportunity to preview before you actually send it. And there's also the Attorney General's phone number and a script that you can follow should you choose. The second thing I would like to say is I plan to, I'm also involved in monitoring Line 3 and plan to go up and check some of the work that Enbridge is doing in northern Minnesota on Tuesday or Wednesday of this week. And in that process, I'd be more than willing to take any kind of donations in the way of food or clothing or even money, I'm sure, to the indigenous camps that are being set up to, again, protest the construction of Line 3. So, if you want to do that, just give me a call or drop some things off on my door and I will take them up. Thanks.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you for your ongoing prophetic work. I have an announcement to say that after worship next Sunday, we will have a congregational meeting. The purpose of the congregational meeting is to hear a report from the nominating committee regarding the two vacancies on the session, our two elders. And you will hear a report nominating two people, and the meeting is to hear that report and to vote on approving them. Are there any other announcements that any of you have?
Gwen, I have an announcement.
Hey, Marcia.
This is more of a minute for mission than an announcement. I am most grateful for the powerful service that we've heard this morning. I'm also grateful to be part of a family of faith that values justice. Several years ago, we began studying systemic racism and chose to begin our own reparations program that awards grants for educational experiences that help learners develop their academic, artistic, and technical skills and talents. In 2019, we awarded $2,000 in scholarships to the American Indian College Fund. And in 2020, we awarded $3,000 in compassionate justice scholarships to 3 Burnsville High School Native American and African American students, and an additional $1,000 for test and college application fees. Our reparations fund money is doing exactly what we want it to do, helping students of color pursue their dreams. And now they ask, we need to replenish the fund in order to keep supporting students. We invite you to make donations to PCA's reparations fund. You can make a difference in young people's lives. Just write a check to PCA with reparations fund on the memo line and mail it to the church. To get us started, Compassionate Justice will match your donations up to $2,000. I will end with the words of a Native American student, Shoshone. I'm going to create a generation of confidence. I'm going to show youth that somebody believes in them for the first time, no matter where they come from, no matter what mistakes they've made, what their circumstances were, that they're not a byproduct of where they come from. They have all of the potential in the world, both in education and outside of education, to do fantastic things for their communities. That's what I'm going to do. Let's help Shoshone and others do those fantastic things. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. What an amazing day to have this Minute for Mission and appeal to replenish our reparations ministry. Tesfa, I don't want to put you on the spot, but it seems kind of weird to me to have been exposed to your prodigious gifts in music and how it informs justice to not do some music right now before the benediction. And I don't have anything planned, and I know, and it's not fair to ask you, but do you have any idea of something we could do musically?
Absolutely. It's interesting. I was sitting here thinking like, man, Tess and I spent so much time sound checking this song and I forgot to do. So It's perfect. So everybody, I need you to stand up. I know that's crazy. So I need everybody to stand up. And there's a reason why I'm asking everyone to stand up. This particular song, turn off my, never mind, I'll turn it back on. This particular song that we're about to sing is a piece that I grew up with, and I saw people stand up randomly as a little boy at that same Baptist church as soon as the Hammond B3 organ started. And this song is called Lift Every Voice and Sing. This was written in the early 20th century by the Johnson brothers, James Weldon and John Rosamond Johnson. And it was premiered in Jacksonville, early 20th century, right around 1902, by 500 grade school children. And by 1920, the NAACP officially adopted this song as the Negro national anthem. This is Lift Every Voice and Sing by the Johnson brothers. And guess what? You might even have a special appearance, maybe, just maybe, of that Hammond B3. So here we go. Every voice and sing, earth and heaven ring, harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound out as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of faith that the dark has taught us. Sing a song full of hope that the present has brought us. Praising the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Verse 2. The road we trod, neither the chasing rod, Sorry. Come back just a little bit. It skipped ahead for some odd reason. We'll go back just a little bit. Starting at verse 2, stone of the road we trod. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat have on our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of a bright star is cast. God of our weariness, God of our silences, Thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, Thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet shake on the places, our God, where we led thee, lest our heart drunk with the wine of the word we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, our God, true to our native land. So I promised you a little bit of Hammond B3, and it was delivered for you.
Wow. How did you get that organ? Is that in your house?
I got I got a friend of mine down in Louisiana to record that. And he recorded it for me, and I was like, man, bless you, because I could use that. It's perfect.
Oh, it was unbelievable. Well, I'm going to make an executive decision after hearing that organ and singing that beloved song to say that was the benediction. That was God's blessing upon all of us. And Jan, I think we're just going to forego with the congregational response and end this service with that music and those words to that hymn. And I know I speak for everyone, Tesfa, thanking you for being here, and to Julie for being our connection to you, to get you to keep coming to Apostles Church and being with us sometimes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank y'all so much for having me. It's been such a blessing to be here with y'all today.